it is not the case. It is still one that we don't spend enough time, I would say, ensuring that people continue to protect themselves from. But I would say it's the most dangerous. Now, I'm a women and girls advocate, and about family. So what I would say is that there are some that are reproductively dangerous, meaning that gone untreated, then we have women and girls that can have reproductive cancers like ovarian cancer, cervical cancer, things of that nature, which can lead to death a lot sooner than HIV and AIDS at this time. So if I were to be more concerned with one, those are the ones that I would look at, being HPV, being, syphilis, gonorrhea, those that are gone untreated and known, that lead up to those issues that we're facing right now with young women. They also lead to infertility. And so that's a big issue, especially for African Americans, is infertility.
Could we, I'm not an expert, but could we also say that any sexually transmitted disease could be dangerous without education?
Right.
That was the first answer that popped into my mind. The most dangerous sexually transmitted disease is ignorance. The people are like, oh, I didn't know that you could get it like that. I didn't know that this can happen. I didn't know that, what we were talking earlier, that once the symptoms went away, that didn't mean that the disease had gone away. So that's the thing that kept coming into my head, is just people not knowing. Like you said, people, we think of HIV because that's been the headline for so long. But I mean, we've all seen like those horrible pictures in the doctor's office of people who have not had syphilis treated or gonorrhea treated, and like, what is that on your body? And you kind of go like, well, how could you ignore that for so long, or be so afraid of the judgment or knowing what it is that you don't get it treated until you get to that point where like you say later on, where I want to have kids. Well, you know that infection that you had 15 years ago that you never got treated, now kids are no longer in the picture.
Right.
Yeah.
If I may, I would just add, what came to mind for me was like herpes, because primarily that's one of the diseases that many don't know to get tested for, or unless it's present, many people don't even pay attention to it. So I would say that's probably one of the ones that came to mind for me.
And we look at it too from a health risk, but if you look at it from a relational standpoint, anything that you don't know that you can transmit to someone else and then they get, you're then left to the whims of how they may handle it. And some people have handled it to the point of murdering someone or assaulting someone. And so you have those instances where someone is like, you gave me this disease and now I'm going to kill you, and so it's really important for young adults and youth to know to get treated, to get routine medical care. And so that's really important, that if you suspect, we have to let people know what are some of the symptoms.
Yeah.
And let people know that, like for example, with gonorrhea, over 700,000 people in America will get it annually. And so people don't know that. And like Greg mentioned with herpes, I have folks that I know that have it, and that's not just traumatizing as an individual, but herpes is one that you can't, there's no cure, there's no known cure. I'm gonna say, I'm a believer, so it's terrible, so I don't say that. But there's no known cure to us, and so as a result, people have to go their lifetime with that. And most people don't want to disclose that information early in a relationship because you're not guaranteed that people are going to even hold that. You know what I'm saying? They're going to respect your personal space in the fact I disclose something to you. You break up. We know nowadays nothing is sacred. Nothing is sacred. We see that just in the little beefs and petty stuff that go on with adults. So that's the concern, is that people really get educated and treated and know how to communicate. That's really key and essential, is just to know how to communicate. What's my status? And it's not life-threatening, but you run the risk. If you're intimate with me, this is your risk. And so that's really key, I think.
And I think that just in listening to you respond, then I have to listen to your question. because you said for you. And you made some key points about communication, relationship, dating. Youth don't think about all of that. You think about sex and the moment of pleasure and class right after. You know, so it takes years for even a lot of adults to learn how to communicate prior to intimacy. So when it comes to the young people, I think that they are at a horrible disadvantage because we're not teaching the full component of intimacy, sexuality, communication, all that is left out. So the younger they are, all they know is the mechanics of sex.
Right.
They know A and B connect. That's it. But when it comes to the whole mindset of it, they can't grasp that. So when they do contract something, they don't think they have anything because it can be a UTI. I got a UTI. Give me some cranberry juice and flush out this chlamydia. That type of stuff, right? So when it comes to, I love Parnell's answer. Ignorance is the biggest thing, and unfortunately, our young people, and ignorance is not a bad word. It's an opportunity, to learn. So our young people, because they're so ignorant to just all the components of sex and what it entails, they put themselves at most risk. I think adults know and make decisions not to adhere to certain things. You sincerely do not know. They just don't know.
And I think to add to you what you said, Dante, then you add the speaking their language to be able to make them to understand. I'm part of the baby boomers, so to be able to speak the language of the millennials, it's a challenge. In fact, I'm reading a book right now so that I'll know how to be able to build relationships and to speak language. So add that makes it even more.
Cultural competency.
Yes.
Just that gap.
Play on that. Why is there a lack of sexual education in schools? Because I'm in my junior year of high school and we still have not had a full-blown sexual education class.
Everyone's like,
Well, I think there's multifold. There's a multi-layered question to that. One of them is priorities, right? Because our education in our community has not been a priority, or it's been a priority that continues to get set back based on money, right? So the lesser amount of money that goes into a school, certain programs get dropped, right? And they get prioritized is in some schools based on what makes money. And in a high school, in a secondary school, what makes money is athletics, right? And your health teacher is probably your PE teacher. It is probably not someone who has sat down and is teaching you health to the degree that maybe Dante or Greg or I would or Adjoa from the community standpoint, where we would sit down and we would talk to you about, okay, what are you doing? What are you curious about? What don't you know? What are you curious about? Your health teacher doesn't have the opportunity to go into that because they're teaching from a curriculum that's probably about 10 to 15 years old, if they're teaching the curriculum at all. Okay? We also we've had schools, Adjoa and I became familiar with each other from working in school subcommittee first the second district. And we also have schools where the kids were graduating without health education from high school and had to be expedited, like in their senior year, like we have to hurry to get you this help. And we recognize that kids are having sex starting in the 7th, 6th grade, and they're graduating high school without sex education. Where they're learning that from, their cell phones, their friends, their music, each other. But what has failed them is us as the adults who are not setting the priorities for our future. Right? We do have opportunities to fix that right now, where California just voted in the Healthy Youth Act, which is a whole comprehensive curriculum that's being folded into schools this year. But this is year 1. Right? And so we can't account for those youth like yourself who are preparing to go to college, right? And still haven't had it. But what we can do is try to be more intentional and better. So why haven't you gotten us? Our priorities, right? Our lack thereof, looking at resources instead of future, right? And really looking at health as money instead of as community, right? So I would say that's the definite biggest issue, one of the bigger issues. Also, we have fragmented school systems, right? Where some school systems get an X amount number of resources and others get significantly less. And in those school systems that get significantly less, your teachers are teaching core subjects and managing school class sizes that are overcrowded.
Right.
So then you make priorities about what you teach instead of giving a full curriculum, which you deserve.
That's the part that I noticed when I worked with certain schools in Los Angeles. The teachers are, the health teachers are not equipped to teach the full gamut of sexual health.
Right.
You know, watching the birthing video is, you know, that's way down the line. What happened before she you know, and then when you talk about just looking at the generation now, things are in place now that we are not addressing and schools are not trying to address. The fluidity of sexuality is now on the forefront. Your generation is more open to hearing about all the different aspects of human sexuality because many of your generation are exposed to all the different aspects of human sexuality. When I was in high school, you're straight, period. That's it. Anything outside of that is not in my high school. Yeah, anything outside of that.
But my high school had the first gay and straight alliance in the state.
And see, mine
And I
did
had the
not.
first openly lesbian speaking instructor on my campus in my high school. And so we actually was the first high school in the state to create safety and space for LGBT students. And we're in the same year.
Yeah, my school was not.
And mine wasn't.
Wasn't
If they
nice.
were, it was, you just knew, the instructor appeared a bit different.
Yeah.
But you didn't have a clue that they were what they were. You just had an assumption that you had an instructor that was a little more manly or an instructor that was a little more effeminate. But it was not obvious. I mean, I'm a 70s baby. Even a piggyback on what Traci and Dante explained is that here's the issue. For my generation, my parents coming up, the focus was our education. The focus was getting back to ensuring that Black children and Black people were educated. So for me, I was a first student at Marcus Garvey, which is still a local elementary here. And the focus was education, that we were all going to college. It wasn't a factor of anything different. Well, in the interim of my parents just focusing on that and working, I became a teen mom. Why I became a teen mom, it wasn't that there wasn't any sex education there. I was assuming from what my peers were saying that they were being intimate. So here I was, and I got caught up in a situation, and I had my daughter. And I was, she's 31, I'll be 46. So I was 15 at the time when I had her, but I was 15 in the 10th grade. I was advanced. I was, I graduated, actually I was 15 in the 11th grade. I graduated at 16. And it was a given that my parents said, no matter what, okay, you did this, you're still going to college. And still, even within that, I had to reflect back and think, my mother really didn't have that conversation with me. And my dad didn't really have that conversation with me. Back then they thought, you know, parents don't really pay attention. She's smart, she's focused on her studies and whatnot. You know, oh, that little boyfriend thing, that's cute, but you know, she's focused on her studies. So that in and of itself changed my mind and my life, that I wanted to go and work with other youth and young adults. And I wanted to be able to help them, you know, because not everybody was as supportive. Here I was a teen mom and my family was supportive. Other people I could see where their family was not supportive, they weren't going to be able to be as successful in parenting, not only that, in developing a career path and going forward. You know, they were going to be shamed. I was in the church. There was a little shame at my mama's church, and there was less shame at my daddy's Baptist church. You know? And my mama's church is the Apostolic Christian church. My daddy's church, you know, hey, you know, we love you, welcome. So, you know, come on. I disappeared for a few months. And mind you, I was a student at St. Mary's, so I was at Catholic school, my Catholic high school. So their recommendation was go over here to St. Anne's, and I stayed at the maternity home. My parents were both newly married; they had separated, divorced, got remarried, and so I just wanted to step away for a minute because it was all a whole lot going on. And so I could never blame them. I'm just saying they did not focus there. And so this is what has happened overall why you don't have sex education is because the focus wasn't there. The focus was on maintaining our lifestyle, making sure our children had better. Then once the teen pregnancy rates went down, by the time you come around, they think it's not important. And like she said, all the other focuses are they're on all the athletics, all of these different programs, and so that's really not necessary. That's just, they're gonna have to get it how they get it. So when we met, like she mentioned, I went with Black Women for Wellness in September to meet with several of our Congress folks, our representatives, to talk about giving you all back the appropriate sex education, age appropriate, so that they can have it back in the school. So she's right, the policy is in effect. Part of the problem is we're not involved, we're not at the table like we need to be for our young people. The churches, I'm so glad that the pastor is allowing you to be here, because as we met, I was part of the interfaith committee. I was one of the chairs for the interfaith committee for the 2nd District on getting education into the churches, because if you can't get it in school, most of it, we know I probably want to say over 90% of us are going to spend some time in church in our lifetime. So why not have it be there? Still young women getting pregnant in the church, it's still young men fathering babies outside of wedlock. Why aren't we going to talk about it here? Why wouldn't we? Greg, I'm sorry.
I just want to add a small piece based on something you said earlier, to answer your question as well. I believe that a lot of times the reason why sex ed is not discussed in schools is because of the parents. They like to believe that it's not happening. So if we don't talk about it, it's not really going to happen. But not realizing that the reality is happening.
But I also believe that one of the reasons why parents choose to believe that it's not happening is because of their own behavior, their own influences. Meaning, intergenerational silence is damaging. If your mother couldn't talk to you about it, and now you can't talk to your kids about it, where does your education come from? Where does your basis come from? How can you have a conversation if no one's ever modeled that for you? Right? How are you going to be able to give something that you don't have? Right?
And we have those parents who fight against that. I don't want nobody talking to my kids about sex.
Right.
But if you're not having the conversation, somebody has got to have the conversation that knows, like, okay, I get it. And especially before I became a parent, you ain't got no kids. I'm like, but I was a child. I was 16. I remember in junior high school, 7th and 8th grade, kids sneaking away from class to go have sex. These are 12-year-olds. And we're not generation. And so why would you then become a parent and then think, oh, not my kid. I taught this good girl. She would never, like, your daughter is a human being.
It's
Do
that
you know
parental
that?
narcissism.
Yeah, that's the part. Yeah.
We think we're better than our parents to a
Right.
large degree, but unfortunately we have a lot of the same, we're facing a lot of the same social conditions, and we're also facing a lot of the same stigmas and issues,
Yes.
right? So you can't, so one generation cannot teach the other generation if they haven't even resolved the issues. So we're all living with open wounds, right? So the question, your original question, you look like you're about to read it. That's why I said. That's why I gave it. Okay. That's why I gave it. Now, in thinking about your original question as to why it doesn't happen, I think it's multi-layered. Yes. I think there's resource issues. I think there's structural issues in the school systems. I think that there's parental issues. I think that there's all of these layers. I think there's a denial. I think there's a lack of representation. I was at a meeting yesterday about the interfaith, discussion, and trying to get those pastors back in the room. There was like 70 pastors in the room a couple months ago, and trying to figure out how to keep that momentum going. And the first thing I said was, the number one way you're not going to keep the momentum going is to bring them back in the room and have the same conversation. Right? And that is also a part of our problem, is that if the conversation ever happens, it's the same one.
Right.
It's not the one that needs to be inclusive of everyone.
Or just to ask them, I'm sorry, just to ask them, what would they like to see happen? Because something needs to happen. We're not trying to tell you what message to convey. We're not asking you to change what the word says, because right now we're in a day and age where nobody can apparently speak the word. Don't get mad at me, the messenger. I'm just going off of what God's word said. And sometimes
you switch questions.
No,
Because I'm still in school. You on the Bible. Okay.
Wake up, Dante.
Okay. Right. But that's the thing. You can't bring people into this conversation with the interfaith in the schools.
Right.
Right, that's why I said, we brought the interfaith in the schools in the room, and we said, we cannot have the same old conversations.
Okay.
Because these are not the same kids.
Right.
Generationally, these kids are facing different issues than I have.
Agreed.
Right, so in my school was a very progressive school. It was very progressive in 1980 something to have an LGBT friendly school, where the school openly discouraged stigma, homophobia, and harassment based on identity. That was unique, right? But I could go around the corner to my friend's school and know that they didn't have that experience. But because of my heterosexual privilege, and I'm going to call it that, I could deny it was happening. I could pretend it wasn't happening. And then I could pretend that my friends that were at risk weren't at risk because they really weren't doing those things that I knew that they weren't doing. Right? So you can't have the same old conversation because these are not the same old people.
No,
the same
no,
old
no,
Right. Agreed.
See,
If I could just,
just
and the same old conversation is
the
what?
same old conversation is when you, and you might see this, when you go into a school, the first conversation is always, what can't you say? Right? You can't talk about, right, some schools don't allow you to say penis.
Right.
Some schools don't allow you to bring in sex, condoms. Some schools, right, some don't allow you to discuss, to show anatomically correct female parts, to be able to have the discussions. Some schools, right, some schools don't allow you to talk about sexuality, right, and the influences of sexuality. You have to, when you go into a school, you have to be, depending on who your gatekeeper is, you have to get the Bible. Okay, so this is where I can only stay right here. But the trick is, you might work on the same campus and have to teach the same way, the same curriculum, 4 different ways to stay on that road. And that's also.
And it gets to the point where you're like, how can you educate people if you're limiting what I can teach them? And the fact of the matter is, we have seen time and time, decade after decade, abstinence-only programs do not work.
That's the other part.
They do not work.
A lot of them only want you to talk about abstinence. And that's not realistic in the context of today's sex.
You got like the kids who are leading the chastity programs or whatever, and then they end up pregnant.
Right.
I'm like, wait a minute, you're the one with the little working and everything.
You know how it works.
Yeah.
They said in the chastity, the people who decided to have chastity sex were together and talked about how difficult it is to have it.
Right. That's the reality, and the reality is, how do we even discuss it from a perspective of if you were deciding to be abstinent and you slipped up and is it the end all be all? Can you start all over again? I mean, people do it all the time. Just because you don't know about it doesn't mean it's not happening. So to be able to have the conversation that is just reality based, not just based upon book knowledge, not just based upon material, but this is the reality. This is what happened. So even for myself, when I first got into community health, I was teaching perinatal health classes in the community at teen pregnancy schools, at some of the local clinics to folks to just be reality based. This is what's going to happen. It's generally the stats that once you get pregnant the first time, you're bound to do it again and again and again. But if you have the information and knowledge, whether it be we got to include the birth control options. What are the birth control options? We can't kill, women, we've been dealing with a lot of the issues where the men want to come in and take over how a woman wants, what she wants to do with her body. So we have to go to the politicians and say, hey, hold up, wait a minute. Because y'all in the room talking like, you not sitting with her. you in the room acting like these things aren't happening and you didn't, get with Mary over here and send her off somewhere to the clinic to get rid of that child because your wife, Susan, wasn't going to tolerate that foolishness. So it's like, come on, let's just be realistic to what's going on and how do we safely maneuver through this thing called life and human nature. Yeah. So that's really part of it, but, you know, we went a ton of places.
That's why you got to spend on
I told you it was a whole back. I warned you beforehand. Another question that may spark a little bit of rivalry. Should parents be teaching their kids sexual education at home?
Very much.
And how should they be doing it?
Starting from the beginning.
Yeah.
Sex education actually starts before sex. It starts with relationship.
Right.
You are going to, because young men, young women are going to have relationships with one another. What is appropriate, right? Stop teaching young girls if the boy pulls her hair that he just likes her. Right?
He just likes you.
Right. Right. Oh, he's picking on me. He's pushing me. He's hitting me. Oh, he just likes you. We give those inappropriate messages. That that's a young girl. We got those messages. We got those messages. I caught my husband telling my daughter that when I was, because he heard his mother telling her sisters that.
Oh boy.
Right, but we tell young girls every day, well, when they're little, oh, he just likes you, baby, it's okay. Tell them to stop. You know what I mean? Until it gets into a problem. And then it's like, oh, now it's really a problem. Right, but we really unintentionally taught her to accept abuse, right? And we really poorly modeled for her.
And
So we have to, right, and we really devalue her. So in a way, we have to start at the relationship. Right, from like pre-K. I mean, really, way before we have to talk about how people get along in the world.
Right.
Period.
It's the modeling. I think the biggest thing for me and just to see in our communities is that we have not modeled the best loving behavior and relationship. True. So it's always been the do as I say, not as I do. Right. So they can see you doing a ton of things. Rick just came by. Next week, Ron is here. Next week, Boo Boo is here. Pookie is over there. You know, and so you're saying, you know, wait. I want you to wait. I want you to wait. And so we're thinking that, you know, our kids are just being wild and promiscuous when in actuality, they're just looking for some love and attention. A lot of the generation that you're coming up in were from a generation of young parents. So you have young parents who have not yet finished actually growing up themselves. So then what happens is the kids are partially raising themselves because as a young parent is trying to figure out their part of life and what they're doing, now they have this child coming up. And we're trying to just learn and maintain and just handle relationships ourselves. We have not done it like grandma and grandpa. We don't even have the staying power half the time nowadays. The staying power is about communication. We don't even communicate well. You know what I'm saying? So part of that is that we haven't learned to model the relationship to be able to teach, but it should be first in the home. It should always be first in the home because I want the messaging to be appropriate. I want you to know that I still love you even if you do, but I would rather you do it in this way. I would rather you protect yourself. I would rather you get the information. I would rather you, even if I can't take you to the doctor, auntie will. Like for example, when I got pregnant, and after my aunt she was an attorney, and she was adamant. She was like, after you have this baby, I'm taking you to the clinic. She didn't ask my parents. She said, after you have this baby, I'm taking you to the clinic. My parents didn't argue with her because she was like, you won't be having no more. You know, we're going to get you the birth control and information, and we're going to move forward with that. And I appreciate that because it gave me a perspective of understanding and education and to decide, do I even want to weigh those options out? And understand me with this. Even those of us who teach it don't mean we got it right. In the heat of the moment, people do what they want to do. You know, so, you know.
I think at the core of it, just listening to both of you talk, parents need to learn to be proactive and not reactive. Mm-hmm. And so often in the work that I do, I am cleaning up what parents didn't do when it's too late. Right. You know, working in the HIV field as an HIV tester, what I'm sharing with these young people is stuff they should have learned at home. Like your mama didn't tell you that, your dad didn't tell you that. You know, it's unfortunate that we have so many kids that still don't know their anatomy. Mm-hmm. You know, they're calling everybody part, every slang term under the sun, but still cannot say vagina without giggling. My penis, why you laughing at that penis?
Right.
But the other one you say with so much force.
Right.
This is my guy. No, what you have is this. And I think that parents should start, like Tracy said, when the kids are little, let your child know when they're 4 and 5 what this is called. Does someone touch your penis inappropriately?
Right.
You know, not your wee wee. No, yes. You know, and I think it's important that if parents would get more involved and have these kind of conversations early on, then the kids won't be so scared to talk about sex. But kids are scared to talk about it because they don't know what their parents are going to think if they have these conversations with someone like me. So I just think that yes, it definitely should start at home.
Or, I love what you said. Or I would say sometimes, but or parents say you can talk to them about anything and they reprimand their kids for what they talk to them about.
Right.
So it's really to the point where parents have to, if they're really wanting their kids to come talk to them, let the kids talk and don't try to hold that against them when they're trying to conduct and figure out how to live life. Because then that's what's going to keep the barrier there. And I think that's oftentimes that a kid will go to a parent and then the next thing you know, the parent's like, yeah, you over here talking about this and that, you supposed to be focused on this. And like, they
It's your nasty self.
yeah,
Right.
and then that makes it where it's like a taboo thing for them to want to discuss again. So
Well, admittedly, that's a difficult situation.
As a parent, I want to acknowledge how difficult that is,
Yeah.
and I also want to say that I have been guilty, and even though I do what I do for a living, I've been guilty, and I can tell you what I told my children in the moment was, I'm not upset and I'm not reprimanding you, but what you see in my reaction is that right now I'm just really afraid. And parents often don't know that they can show their children that vulnerability. Right? I'm not screaming and hollering and acting out because you did something bad. Right now, I'm just afraid. Maybe I don't know what it is. Maybe I don't know how to tell you what it is.
Right.
Maybe I know what it is and I don't want to tell you because now I don't, because I want to control the message. But I think a big part of parenting for me has been stopping and stepping back and being able to say to my kids, you know what? Right now, I'm just scared.
Tracy, let me just commend you for being transparent. And to piggyback on that, then it sounds like to me, we need a place for parents to be able to say just what you said. That there's some things that I don't know how to say it, I'm afraid about it, and I need some help. Just for the parents.
Right.
I think that would help a lot.
I definitely agree with you. I definitely agree with you because I think that parents can only talk about sex to the place that they understand it. And if you, for example, a lot in the work that I do, people assume that I can, and you know so much, and it's like blah 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 blah. But then when I go home, I'm the old married lady. So people assume that I've never slept with anybody in my life. So it's really like this whole, like as a parent, I want you to see my relationship with my spouse. I want you to see the structure. I want you to see a positive relationship because I want you to have it. But don't assume that I've never had one. Don't assume that I've never been where you are. And the only way for me to help you not make that assumption is to be transparent about the fact that along the way I made some mistakes too.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that. I'm sitting here in my mind, I'm thinking about my daughter and my brother. I raised, after my mother passed, I raised my brother and my daughter. They're 4 months apart. So I didn't say that I was pregnant at the same time my mother was. And so the challenge that I faced, and even now, I said, it's funny you say that, Pastor, I'm going to start a group for parents of adult children because it is still a challenge because I want that, they do all types of stuff and I'm like, I got to get buck with these folks because they're not hearing me. And, they've even said to me, you just a square, you don't know nothing. I have to give you my whole resume for you to understand that I know what I'm talking about. And that what I wanted to do, my biggest fear back then was my daughter being a teen mom. Now my biggest concern for, not her because I'm a grandmother, my biggest concern for my grandchild and for these young people are the human trafficking people. So why should it start at home? Because now we got to fight their peers, because their peers are trafficking them, as well as I gotta fight just this system that is not just their peers, and other people come from other countries, and their behavior now has, we've gotten caught up in where we didn't really have to worry about that, it seemed, for black girls, but now we have to just be just as concerned. And so I'm trying to teach them at the same time. It was like, you don't know nothing. You ain't experienced nothing. I've experienced that and then some, but
It just wasn't on social media.
Right.
Thank you, God.
Thank you. It's a lot of, I had to do a lot of repentance myself, because I would say, I'd be like, okay, now I have something, I'm gonna just give it to you, cut, dry, raw, yeah, I told you but you wanna do this, so here it is.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'll tell you, I had an epiphany one time, like you were talking about, Tracy, and God said, you real hard on them, but you ain't doing what I told you to do either. So you gotta have that type of compassion with your children to be able to say, you're just as human as I am. But I do have some requirements that I would love for you to meet. For yourself, not just for my benefit, but for yourself. Because it could be beneficial to you down the road, because I've already been there. And it's teaching young people that you don't have to go that route just to say you did it. If I told you the fire is hot, that's what it is. You don't have to get burned to experience and know and walk away with the bruises that I've already been cut from. And so I think that's what a lot of us wanted to happen. How we conveyed it may not have been the best way. Because again, like I said, there was a generation of young parents and be involved in the school system and involved in policy. We weren't. And now that's the goal, is to get back, to get involved and try to save some of our young people just through the education and awareness.
Well, back to the STD talk. What kinds of STDs are there, and what are the symptoms?
You want the top 5, or you want the list of 27?
I want the whole list. Because I've already been through all of them at the age of 7. It wasn't fun.
I know my sister girl.
All of them, right? Basically, you have the A-listers.
Right.
The syphilis, chlamydia, gonorrhea, herpes, HIV, trichomoniasis.
Depending on BP, depending on
Yeah.
who
Yeah,
you
it just
ask,
depends.
it's not, BP is not technically not a sexually
Bacterial
transmitted disease,
vaccine.
but it is also,
Right.
but it is also a sexually
And
associated
depending on where you
disease.
live, some are more prevalent in some parts of the world.
Right.
So the
Now
list.
we have Zika.
Yeah, right. The list is long. It's long. It's expansive. But the thing that I love about STDs.
We don't want to read a word
is that when you really sit down and educate on them, they're all avoidable.
Mm-hmm.
It's avoidable. And you really just take the time. Conversation. What do you have? Have you ever had? When was your last test? So a lot of times we focus on having all this signage and all that kind of stuff, but we never talk about communication. We say what you don't want to catch, but how do I not catch it? So you have people walking around on eggshells, scared to touch somebody because I don't want to get what you got. Well, you won't get it by touching me. Let me tell you how you get it, and ask me questions. And as a person living with HIV, I would always tell people who want to date me, I'm the best person you want to date that has HIV, because I'm going to do all I can to make sure you don't contract it.
Right.
But you have people out there who can care less about you and will do everything to your body and then disappear.
Right.
So if you're going to date anyone, this from my HIV standpoint, that's living with HIV, if they say I have the virus, don't run. Just be like, okay, so what can we do? Talk to
How are
me.
you taking care of your
Yeah, let me know what can we do. You know, what's your viral load?
Ask me, right.
You know, are you
Ask me,
getting treatment? You know, and when it comes to syphilis, chlamydia, gonorrhea, all that, it's treatable. It is highly treatable, but because people are being, the thing I'm noticing now is that since the focus is so much on HIV, that the other ones are on the back burner.
Right.
So the young people, I don't want to catch AIDS. Well, you don't catch AIDS.
Right.
I'm not catching. I don't want to catch AIDS. I don't want to catch AIDS. So, but they never say, I don't want to catch syphilis. I don't want to catch chlamydia. I don't want to catch gonorrhea. They never say
Not
that.
knowing all of the adverse effects to even syphilis.
Right.
You know, there are a number of them, you know, gone untreated, you know, blindness, it was just
Insanity.
insanity. Well, that's not the problem. That's your problem.
What you got?
You thought you were right. But, you know, so it's a lot of untreated issues. So, like he's saying, in the second district alone, how this came about when the supervisor, Mark Ridley Thomas, was involved, was because chlamydia and gonorrhea are the highest just in the second district for Black women and girls and Latinas just through the ages of 12, I think we went 12 to 25. Yeah, and so.
Now, you should pause right there. The mere fact that you said 12
12.
should make
I was
everybody
like,
watching this gag.
Right.
They should be like, wait, did she just really say 12 years old? Yes, and you catch syphilis how?
Right.
Through sex.
Right.
So you just said 12 years old,
Right.
STD. That should be a wake-up call for so many people, but it's still not.
Right, I bought the 12-year-old over there laying down with me because, and he said, oh, I don't need to hear that. And my friend goes, how old are you? And he's like, he tries to say he's 13, not yet. But she's like, he's 12. And so he's like, he hemmed and hawed about it. And I said, no, you actually do. Because she said, you like the girls? And he was like, you know, young, still gonna be like an adolescent. But he was the one who told us that I'm gonna go with my auntie this morning. Because he knows better than I what the 12-year-olds are doing.
Right.
You know, he was at Audubon, we took him out of there. So I was an Audubon student, so I know what it was like. Right?
Audubon student. And here we are.
Here we are. So it's really key and essential that you just be aware of what they all are.
But can I piggyback on that too? Because we have to think when we say, and what you're saying is important, and I don't want you to lose your flow, but I want to point out that we let people know what District 2 is.
Okay.
District 2 are these places where mostly people of color live,
Yes.
right? Inglewood, Compton, Watts, Linwood, South Central, right?
South LA.
South
South
LA,
LA.
right? Sola,
I'm from South Central. South Central.
right? So these are the communities where we live, right? And so, and our kids, and this is where we live, this is where our kids are sexually experimenting, this is where, and people who, right, and as we know, those people that you have sex with and marry are the people that are in your closest proximity, right? So Black women in Compton, Watts, Linwood, Inglewood, Sola are 8 times more likely than their white counterparts to have an STD. So it's almost like in South Central and in cities that having an STD is almost a normative or an expectational part of sex, as long as you don't get something that's untreated first. Right? So in a lot, but if you think about it and you think about your friends and you think about how it was when we were growing up, we all knew somebody called the clap. We all knew somebody that had to take a turquoise pill, right? And they hid it, and then got the shot in the butt, right? But it was like something we kept it a secret, and we didn't really talk about it, but we all knew what happened.
Right.
Nowadays, do you test? Is the question. Are people testing is the question. If people are testing, then we know more and more and more. So are we, when we look at these numbers, is it that we have many more STDs? Maybe not. It might be that more people are testing and we know more now. Right? So it could be a number of things. But we don't know. We don't know. I don't know if people are not testing. People, but depending on their health care.
I was just about to say that.
Because
Yeah.
pre-exposure prophylaxis has multifold increased the amount of STI testing that's happening.
See how you shifted the whole conversation?
Sorry. Sorry. Thank you for doing it. I'm sorry. But yes, but no, I'm sorry. No, but right. I meant to tell you about that. I'm sorry. I apologize on behalf of the past. But yes, if you think about 8 times women, African American women 8 times more likely, Latino women in this community 6 times more likely. What do we need to do?
That's fair. And I would just add as well, is the importance of making sure young people know how to learn about their own bodies. Because of course, as you mentioned, symptoms, like once you see something different, that's when they should know that this is when you need to go on in there and get tested or go get checked or talk to your parents.
You may have a problem.
Right. This is not normal.
And also knowing aromas.
Right.
Know how you're supposed to smell.
Right.
You know,
You should not smell.
You should know how you
know how you smell. But also just to kind of add to what you both said, and I was listening with, talk about, the locations and the facilities and all that. One thing that I know is missing and why our kids are having so much sex is because they have nothing else to do.
Yes.
Right.
Our kids have no recreation.
Right.
So when I look at HIV rates, especially down south, and I ask my people all the time, why do you think kids down south are getting HIV, the most? Oh, because because they're bored.
Right.
Sex is free
Right.
and easily accessible.
Right.
So if you don't have no money, if you have no sports practice, no after school programs, no YMCA, no bike, no skate, no BBS, no YPWW, you ain't got none of that. I know, if you ain't got none of that, you're bored. You're bored. Add that to the fact that you're in a single parent home,
Right.
your mother's working 2 and 3 jobs.
Yes.
So now you're home all day by yourself in the summer because you have nowhere to go. What can you do but have multiple people come over
Right.
and just have sex? Allow your friends to come and use your mom's bed to have sex.
Right.
So when it comes to sex, our kids have no alternatives. And that is the fault of the community. We need to really be pushing to get some after school programs, some activities, because I know for a fact when you're young and you're tired, all you want to do is go to sleep.
Right.
If your kid got basketball practice, football practice, karate practice, and all that kind of stuff, when he get home, he'll call her and say, I'm gonna take a nap. And he'll wake up the next day and say, oh my
Thank
God,
you.
I was tired.
Thank you.
They need something to do.
Right.
Because sex is too accessible, and when they catch something, they don't know it because all of them do not have symptoms immediately following. All STDs do not have symptoms. So there are a myriad of young people walking around right now, symptom-free, never had a symptom, but never thought to go to the clinic because they're not sick.
But, and you bring up a very valid point, and it is key and essential. We cannot still be the community that just shows up at the ER.
Right.
And because we've been that way, we have not, we've been preventative. Some of it is we still got some of that Tuskegee stigma, all of that after effects of that on us. But the reality is our children, our families should have primary care physicians. And especially now that Affordable Health Care Act is in place, you have no reason not to be taking your children annually, semi-annually for their checkups.
But will a parent think to get their child checked for an STD?
That part.
Would you?
I
as a
did,
parent? Okay.
and I will tell you, I had the best nurse practitioner around. Her name was LaTanya Barnett of Kaiser. I think she's still there. If anybody has Kaiser, I say see her. Because LaTanya was the type that said, okay, now mother, I need you to step out the room. And she would talk. And I was cool with LaTanya having a conversation without her. And because she was going to be able to talk about some stuff, she wasn't going to talk to me. I come from, I'm in a book club with 10 other sisters, and we've been from 10 to 20 different women at a time, and we've been doing this for 17 years. And we're the type that we just...
No, we won't have book side. It was like, oh, book club. And so what we've done is we feed off of one another to help support each other in the rearing of our kids when it comes to relationships. Whatever it is, we're very, transparent with one another, and we like it like that because I'm not going to be able to take your information and share it outside of this group. We keep it together.
And it has helped that if my child needs to go to any of those 10 aunties, she's free to do it. And I trust them enough that they're going to give her the correct and accurate information. I trust them when I come in there and I'm angry. And Nikki was one of them. Elijah's mother was one of them. We used to, you know, before Elijah came along, before Elijah came along, it was the three of us. Me, her,
Hold up, roll back. Wait a second.
before you stepped on the scene, your sister was here, and I had my child, and Christy had her twin. And we would do the same for one another. We would support each other in the rearing of those children. That if I fall in some area, my village is going to pick up.
Right.
And that's what you have to be able to build that village that could, you know, care for your children enough to say, hey, I'm going to take them over here to this practice. I'm going to take them over here to get some education. I'm going to be the one to support you in this effort because I want to see your child win. I want to see you win. I know you're working several jobs. I know you're in school. I know you're doing whatever as a parent. I'm going to help out. And that's what we have to get back to, that village that is concerned enough that we can, you know, have pastors like
Pastor Robert.
Pastor Robert.
Yeah.
We can have pastors like Pastor Robert that say, you know what, it's okay, my church is open, you know, I'm gonna come in, I'm gonna give the you know, beginning message, and I'm gonna let you guys have your way with it. And we're gonna respect Pastor Robert enough to not come in here with my character, but just to come in here and share so that if the youth need me, if they have questions that they don't wanna ask publicly, they can see Dante, Greg, Tracy, Parnell off the scene and have that discussion. But to even have youth like yourself be the peer educators,
That's right.
so that you too can share the message. That if somebody needs to come to you with a message, or you say, oh, okay, well, I'll go with you to the clinic. I'll sit and wait with you until you get your results. I don't know that information. I'll go and find out. I'll refer you to someone. And so that's the conversations we need to be able to have with the youth. Just
And can I'm sorry. You can reach another youth at your level quicker than I could, because you know you're right there. There's a passage in scripture that I love and I quote a lot and I share a lot. Paul was Timothy's spiritual father. He said to him in one of the passages, he said, I'll break it down to make it sound a little easier to understand. He says, and the things that you have heard, seen in me, commit those to faithful men who shall be able to teach others also. So you get some education, you get some knowledge, you teach another person, and that person passes it, you know, pass it on. And before long, the information is getting there. And we have to challenge young people like yourself as you become educated, then pass it on to the next young person. And I think that we can make a difference. And I appreciate, my dear sister, what you said. We want to be an oasis for our community. We want to invite our community to come in to have a safe place that you can share knowledge and not feel that you're going to be condemned, and that we can help you and to show compassion, right? And that's what our Lord did. He showed compassion, looking beyond our differences. For some clergy, what gets in the way of HIV and AIDS education is the stigma that it is a gay disease. If we can move beyond that and know that we are to model compassion and love, and everything gets filtered through that, then we can change. I am so heartbroken to know that District 2, the information that you shared about what we have to experience, and the church does have to get involved. And that's why I so appreciate you, young man, Raja, and for all of you that have come, because this is what we need. And I believe that in small groups, we can probably get a lot more accomplished than the larger groups. You didn't ask me that.
Another question which may actually take a while is, what are the differences between syphilis and congenital syphilis?
You have thinking like, where my
To give
call?
you the
What
right
man
answer.
got
'Cause I don't
it?
want
No, I'm
to.
happy over there. Look, I have up here.
Yeah, I don't want to ever give.
Somebody get Tracy's book.
You recording this and my name's on the line. I got a brand. Well, see,
Well, let me see. Look, let me see if it's in my STD. I have an STD cheat sheet that I keep in my purse sometimes. That's my big old suitcase.
So you want another question while we look for
Yeah,
it?
we'll look at that.
Yeah, go to that one.
Since we're on the subject of STD screenings, are they confidential? And how do they work?
Yes.
Go for it.
Yes. So you have okay. So one thing people should be very clear about is when you're going to get an STD test, that does not include an HIV test unless you specifically ask for it.
Right.
They're not going to test you for HIV unless you say, I want to get STDs and HIV. Why that is, I have no idea. So I work at a clinic, and so if you go to a hospital, their HIV test is an actual blood draw, and they send blood to the lab. If you go to an HIV testing clinic, there is a 60-second rapid test you can take that gives you your results in 60 seconds, and it's only a mere finger prick. It's a finger prick, get some drops of blood off of that, and you run it, and within a minute you know your results. For an STD screening, depending on the STD they're testing for, is a different kind of procedure. So there's an actual blood draw that tests for syphilis, and then your analysis is for chlamydia and gonorrhea. Okay? Depending on the kind of sex you have, you do oral, anal, and vaginal, they're going to swab your throat if you have oral sex. So they'll swab your throat because you can get oral gonorrhea, oral syphilis, chlamydia in the mouth, that kind of thing. They'll also swab the anus if you're having anal sex. If you're receiver anal sex, they're going to swab the anus and check for STDs back there as well. So people need to, the main thing people need to remember when they go for an STD test is honesty. You have to be honest because whatever we talk about is going to be 100% confidential in that room because we have to follow HIPAA. Mm-hmm. And that means that we cannot share anything unless you say you're going to hurt an old person or a child. You know,
Or yourself.
Or yourself. But anything else you do, and I always tell people, I'm an HIV educator, sexual health educator. I don't care what you do because I've heard it all. Mm-hmm. Nothing you say is going to surprise me. I worked inside jail, so I have heard everything possible that the human body can do sexually, and nothing shocks me. And I'm also trained poker face. When I do hear stuff, I'm like, wow, you do that? Okay. But on the inside, I'm like, oh my God. It's nasty. But people need to understand that our job, myself and Greg, we both do the test, is to make the person feel as comfortable as possible because we need that transparency. The minute someone feels uncomfortable, they're going to shut down because sex is the most awkward thing to talk about with a total stranger. So when we get men that come in, and we know some of these men are bisexual, and if we ask the question, have you ever been with another man, and they sit there and pause, why you ask me that?
That's a yes.
Right. But no, it's really like, and I have to clarify that it's not because I want to get your business, or that I even care. It's because I want to give you the best counsel possible so that if you are engaging in sex with both men and women, I can make sure you're safe on both sides of the fence. I hate to say it like that. But when it comes to the STD test, be clear that you want STDs and HIV. If you're scared of needles, there is a blood draw with them. Make sure you gotta pee when you go. You'll be sitting in the lobby with cups of water until you gotta go to the bathroom. But it's really something that everyone should do on a regular. If you are having sex and you are not aware of the status of your primary partner, make sure you're getting tested. It is not to shame, it's not to embarrass, it's really all about you. The HIV STD test is not for the other person, it's about you. So you can know your status, so you can know what cards you're holding when you walk into the bedroom or backseat of the car, or wherever you get in. Car, church. So that's why. And you guys got the syphilis?
Yes.
Can I add one more thing? I also tell people that are not always sexually active and still come every 3 months because once you get in the momentum of coming back consistently, it becomes a habit. You know,
Part of your health regimen.
routine. There you go. And so that way it's just like every 3 months, you know, go to that clinic, go to the spot to get tested. So I think that's important to kind of share as well. So that's all I was asking that.
So the word congenital means present from birth, right? So someone who has congenital syphilis is born with it. And I wanted to say it, but I didn't want to.
Right, that's the same way.
It was in my head, but I didn't want to spit it out, and I wanted to look it up to make sure that I wasn't talking straight, that I wasn't speaking out the side of my neck. So
You ain't gonna take her job.
Okay. That part. That part. Okay.
She said it was sis.
So right. So it was right. And I'm looking right now at the STD surveillance program to look at the numbers too, because I wanted to see what it really meant by LA County standpoint too, right? So congenital means present from birth. So an infant who develops syphilis has been born with it, has been exposed to it by the birth mother, right? And in Los Angeles, right here it says 343% increase between 2010 and 2014 in Los Angeles. So that means that the numbers went from a low, we had 7 cases in 2010 to 31 in 2014. So that could be speaking back to testing and the necessity of testing as well. So what else did you find out?
Same thing. The importance or the real concern is that you have a great risk of a child being having developmental disabilities and other birth defects. So why it's so important to be caught prior to is because it can be treated. So it's a hard thing to sometimes treat a woman who's pregnant because there's so many contraindications during her pregnancy that you don't want to expose the child to while they're in the womb. So, but this is as a result of her being pregnant with syphilis, then the child can be born with syphilis and have all these effects, including jaundice and developmental delays and things of that nature. So that being the difference of congenital versus syphilis.
Versus acquired. Really.
Right, acquired through sex, you know. And some of the things you didn't even mention, like I remember somebody told me, and I was like, wow, they had herpes in their eye.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, you know what? Take off my glasses. I don't want nothing.
Yes.
But I tell you what I don't want is something in my eye. Good Lord. And so, you know, you have to, it's so many, it's just a gamut with this STD exposure and this STD risk. And I think at one point, and I don't know how much we're educating on that, is that at one point a lot of young women thought they weren't at risk because they weren't having vaginal sex.
Right.
And so they were still considered a virgin because they were just going anal. But no, sex is sex, sex is sex. And so it still put them at exposure and risk. And Dante brought up a valid point. A lot of women, sad to say, why those risk factors were, you know, we jumped from 2010 to 2014, those high numbers, because a lot of women knew, you know, I don't know what we do sometimes just to keep hold of a semblance of a relationship. And knowing Johnny Ray went to jail, and generally Johnny Ray is there past 1 year. You know, come on, he did 10 years. Johnny Ray generally was doing something. You know, no, I won't say it's only that. I'm not finished. I won't say it's only that. It's that we don't have clear conversations and real reality of what people are interested in sexually. I saw a meme that somebody said, you know, ask a woman what she's interested in sexually. We already know half the time what men want, but men don't even feel, you know, like they need to be concerned with what we want. We're not even concerned enough to be able to ask the poignant question, are you intimate with other people? Have you been intimate with men? You probably won't get the answer. Some things women just don't want to ask the question on, men too. They don't want to ask the questions because they don't want the answer. They just want this relationship. And if it's just a relationship where we have sex on occasion, it's some semblance of a relationship. And this has been passed down, you know, I don't want to say throughout generations, but in reality, yes, it has. You know, some of us looked up and we found out Big Mama was cheating on Big Daddy. And Uncle Bobby was not Big Daddy's child. So you know, it's just a lot of
Feel we find it all out.
Right.
Sometimes I was like, those are so each
Right. That's what come on. We stop crying.
The nature of what slavery did to us, but it is still a part of that. It is still a part of the multiple relationships that Master had, you know, the men having. And it still plays out today that, you know, we say they're not enough for me to, you know, just have my own man. And that's not the reality. Sometimes we just want what we want and we deal with what we want. And so, we've become accustomed to just having this, and then we don't deal with, these conversations don't come up. I tell people all the time, and I'll let it share. I tell people all the time, they talk about women and risk and association of risk, and I say, listen, if somebody's homeless, somebody's hungry, somebody has, you know, just mental, you know, emotional distress, and just the mere fact of post-traumatic stress disorder in our communities and what we face daily, the deaths, you know, the shootings and murders that still have not stopped to this day. They're the trauma. Yeah, they're not thinking about that. It's not important. What's important is that I just get me some gratification right here and now, just a little bandage on my open wound. You know, it's just gonna cover up for the moment. We think, and it just adds to it, but that's the reality. It's on the back burner. We want to be able to work to get it to the forefront of our minds because it's negatively impacting us. It always has negatively impacted. While we're concerned is our rates are too high while everybody else is are lower, you know, in our community.
All of that goes right back, goes back into what we were talking about earlier about comprehensive sex education in the schools. Because I remember we had sex education like 5th or 6th grade. That was when the guys were like, you guys are about that at that point where puberty is about to onset, so let's talk about your changing body. You know? And we had those, but I was, of course, my mom had already taught my sister-in-law this stuff. So by the time we got to class, I know this. My mom taught my aunts, you know, I had my little book and everything. I remember, well, I don't remember, mom told us. When I was little, my mom was changing my sister's diaper. And I was like, what happened to her penis? And she's like, well, she doesn't have one. I said, why did it break off? And she's like, no, you know, girls have a vagina, boys have a penis. I'm like, oh. And my Uncle Jerry had been walking and said, Uncle Jerry got a penis? And he's like, what are you teaching this? And she said, my baby wants to know what body parts are, so I'm teaching him. And so I'm like, so Uncle Jerry got a penis, yeah. Daddy got a penis, yeah. You got a vagina? She said, uh-huh. Oh.
Okay. And that goes back to what we talked about earlier, where it starts at.
Yeah. And that was age appropriate because I asked the question and he didn't have to well, babies come from, I didn't ask all that. I just asked that. So I think parents make that mistake. Oh, I got to hear your whole lowdown on how this. I'm like, well, that was great, but I didn't ask all that.
Right. And I'm still confused.
And I'm still confused. I just need to know that. And later on, I may ask, okay, well, where do babies come from? Oh, babies come from here. Okay, that's it. Later on, well, how does baby get there? Then answer that question. But everybody goes like, oh Lord, I gotta have this whole conversation. I'm so scared, I'm so nervous, I'm embarrassed about it. Like, okay, but that's the part of being a parent. And like you said, we make mistakes, we don't always get it right, and that's the part of parenthood as well. No, you're gonna make mistakes, you're gonna screw up. It's okay. But being able to go like, okay, and you say, if you have aunties or uncles or whatever, go talk to your auntie so go talk to uncle so, but I don't know, I'm uncomfortable talking about that. You know that they know all this stuff, and I trust them to give you the correct information. So that is being able to step out of the way for your children's betterment, out of your fear and uncomfortability. It's like, okay, my child needs to know these things. This is why we, you know, baby mama and Eliza's mom and I have been like, okay, we're gonna make sure that here are some condoms. So I'm not saying go have sex, but I'm like, I know what I was doing when I was 16. So I will never want to be like, well, I didn't have them. No, BS, yes you did, because your mom and I made sure that you had something. You know, and that whole thing of like, okay, he's at that age. Here's goes. But be realistic about what human nature is.
And I think one of the, because you hit on something, talking about the women and all that, I think one thing that we do a major disservice when it comes to educating about sex and sexuality and all that kind of stuff, we don't prepare the person to hear the truth. So we tell women, ask him this, ask him that, ask him that. Okay, you asked me, tell you the truth, and now you're going off on me.
Right.
It's all on social media.
Right.
It's all on this. But you asked me, so I'm trusting you with my truth. But now you took my truth and ran, so now you just really messed it up for the next woman.
Right.
Now I'm not gonna be honest. You know, you come in and say, so Dante, have you ever? Yeah. Have you ever? Yeah. Okay, well Dante, that's not what I'm looking for. But you know, we still good. Instead of saying, oh my God, you did what? Girl, can you believe it? If you ever meet Dante, that he does this, I'm looking like, but you asked me. I trusted you because I liked you. You know, I ain't hit you. I ain't ran up your credit. I ain't stole your car. You know,
Like Johnny did.
right. Like Johnny did. We even had sex.
Right.
And you blasted all my business over because I thought we were good enough to have open conversation and you can handle my truth like I've been handling yours all along.
And so that really speaks to intimacy, being able to share what you need to share without judgment, and the misunderstanding that young people, and to be honest with you, older people have misunderstanding intimacy, and thinking that intimacy is just sex.
Right.
Biblically speaking, there is a scripture that says, guard your heart from because out of it flows the issues of life. If you trust someone and you're honest with them, and that person exposes or make you feel crazy because you share truth, then you are supposed to take back your heart. You know? And so you gotta guard your heart, right? We want people to be able to be intimate, to be able to share what's on their heart without judgment.
Which also goes to men asking women, well,
How many partners have you had?
you know, they're like, well, you know, and for some reason that women aren't supposed to have this one man or one, like, but if you have a woman who has as much sexual experience as her partner, all of a sudden, wait, you're all wonderful and studly, but I'm a whore, but I'm all these other things that I'm
But in thinking about youth and the double standard in youth, it is even more severe
Yes.
because of social media.
Right.
So the social media, like to go back to Dante's point and thinking about youth, the double standard gets publicized.
Yeah.
Right? And so it gets magnified. Right? So even if you have intimacy, even if you have two youth that have been taught up to have enough intimacy and honesty, the question becomes, at what point do they hold the privacy of the other person and respect that privacy on the way out? So it's teaching people from beginning to end.
Right.
That's good.
And
Right.
including the sexting and the texting is really key and essential for them now because they can get caught up legally. You know what I'm saying? And what you're saying is sharing in social media and somebody goes out and kills themselves, you know, you gotta, I mean, this sex,
That's just murder. Right?
yeah, this sex education piece is a lot bigger than what we used to think because it's so important that, you know, I talk to him all the time, my nephew, about it, is that don't share nothing somebody sent you to other people because you can be held legally responsible. Then you have, and they don't mind doing it, especially for black men, now you gotta be labeled a sexual predator for the remainder of your life on something that, you know, back in the day wouldn't have been considered that serious. You know, you even have to be careful with young children. It is not uncommon for young children to want to experiment and look at each other's body parts. And so now you have that in elementary. I had somebody post that the other day, my son and he, you know, applauded his son, but at the same time, I gotta go down here to the school. I said, wait, hold up. Make sure you dot your I's and cross your T's. Because they didn't put your son up on some charges, you know, because, you know, little baby over here, she was trying to, you know, exactly. And so it's such a big conversation to have about not exposing people, not, you know, sending your nude pictures, you know, to one another because then it can be caught up in the pornography and the trafficking. It's not just what it used to be. We have to have such a conversation to protect our youth, as well as, you know, legally responsible, as well as their health protection. I'm sorry, Tracy.
Now, about the STDs, we have such a massive increase in STD, like gonorrhea, HIV/AIDS cases. What should we be doing about this?
This.
Your generation, our us here.
Just in general, what should us as parents or members of the LGBT community or elders in general who know young people who are having sex who could be receiving these STDs, what should we be doing to try and prevent this?
Pushing conversations like this to go viral. Because a lot of kids, they're online. So what they may not hear in school or whatever, they'll sit up on their bed at 1 in the morning and just watch this and say, wow, that was kind of cool. I learned something. It's just really just not being scared to have the conversations, those tough conversations. It may feel awkward or uncomfortable, but just have the conversation and then exhale afterwards.
And be a service to your community. Meaning, once you educate yourself up and being open to have the conversation, but be able to do something with it. Meaning, my kids didn't want to come to mom about sex because they knew mom knew too much, right? But they could go to their aunts, right? Because we had that privilege. But when their friends have problems, they come to the sex ed.
Yeah.
So the door has to stay open, and I have to be able to say to them, "This is what this is." Excuse me. And this is where you can go to this school. So I have to be more than just open and willing to have the conversation. I have to be willing to support them, whatever it is, right? So if this young man is having a problem with his male counterpart, I have to be able to hear his experience and how that's shaping and informing his experience, and be able to help him be okay with going to whatever that next step is. And then I have to role model that, so my kid will do it, so the community will be better.
Right.
You
You
know,
know, go.
Just watch my I would just say, make sure that we still focus on the prevention aspect. I think now that, other things like PrEP and PEP came along, people stopped talking about prevention, and I think that's been minimized. So I think if we continue utilizing the prevention aspect that's important, the education components, I think that can assist with alleviating some of the
Speak on that too, real quick. Over the last, between October and December, we did about 200 HIV. We trained 250 women on HIV prevention, and we did a core. We talked about STDs as a core part of that, and testing as a core part of that. And we had these huge community conversations. And what we realized is that the women left saying, "I heard this information before, but I get it now. I understand it better." I think what happens sometimes is that in our messaging, we're not open to receiving the questions, right? So people, we spew out a lot, but sometimes we don't receive it,
Right.
right? And so I think it's not only in talking about prevention, we have to be as comprehensive as possible, because we have to respect the sexual relationships of everyone,
Yeah.
but also we have to respect them as people too. And so we have to be able to answer as well as question. So the prevention and talking about prevention is like intimacy, relationship, it's a continuum, right? It's a tree, right? So it starts from you and our friends were playing ball all the way to maybe we may be having sexual relationships, right? So prevention is huge,
Right.
but necessary.
not assuming everybody knows.
And not assuming everybody knows.
Right. I remember, because I worked for, they're not called Division of HIV and STD Prevention, which was Office of AIDS when I worked for them. It was about 18 years ago. And I came in on the side of working with the drug expansion counselors that were going and my counselors were doing testing in some of the recovery houses and some of the methadone treatment centers. So I was dealing with injection drug users that were being exposed to HIV and AIDS. And I remember we had a conference and it was about hundreds of women came, but I was able to set up, you could do informal events, set up an event with about 20 of those women that wanted, a pastor to come in and just talk with them, because they were at a point of they were living with HIV, but they were being cast out of their families, not, being cared for by their loved ones, and they were still in fear of dying back then. And so we had a meeting, I kept in touch with some of them, but here it is, again, we got away from needle exchange and all of those things. But here our issue now is, where we thought we were free of the drug issue, now we have young folks like in your age bracket who are popping pills, they're doing the mollies, they're doing, I tell people all the time, free is not really free. At these marijuana places locally, they're not even thinking about what they're being exposed to with being able to have their marijuana card, and they have all these synthetic drugs and whatnot. And so that puts them at even another greater risk when they combine that with sexual intercourse. And so, like you said, the prevention message, where should the prevention message be? Wherever they are, everywhere. Wherever they are, the prevention message should be there. It should be, hey, you in our community, you selling drugs to our young people, I need you to put up some information up in here so that they are aware. If you're going to sell that at your, smoke shop, have some condoms and some stuff in here, because you're putting them at greater risk. They're smoking and whatnot, and like, you see the memes, and I'm like, yeah, that looks just like the crack addicts used to look. That don't look like nothing good from your marijuana usage. I knew folks who smoked weed back in the day.
Don't you do it! Don't you do it!
I'm not gonna have a president Obama. But I will tell you this, did nothing for your sister, girl right here, but, because I was about shopping, I was more wanting to spend my money on something different. But I will tell you this, there's no new game here, just new players, same exact issues. We just have to be a bit more strategic as we do this, and like mentioned, it just has to be an informal conversation.
Community dialogue are big. Not only, but Barbara, like what you're saying, podcasting,
Right.
being able to take advantage of the spaces where people are, being able to help people talk to one another. One of the biggest programs I have is we went into this high schools and we taught other kids to talk to other kids. And that happens all the time, and that can happen at a community level. Greg can do things like that. That's can do things like that. So it's really about infiltrating the spaces and being in the spaces where people are and are open to being able to have a realistic conversation and setting them up for the conversation to not be so narrow.
I think you have to do it for clergy too, because if you can get pastors educated, I know it's difficult, but we have to keep pushing.
Right. And honestly, I think, Dante does a lot of amazing work in that area. But, even in the interfaith breakfast that we went to, we had, there were about, I think they said it was about 60 or
70, and they were on fire. They were ready for it, but again,
Ready for what?
they were ready for the dialogue. They were ready to participate. They were ready for it to be brought into some of their churches.
What we talking about in what? Because I don't want clarity.
We were talking about chlamydia and gonorrhea. They did get now Sebastian, Mark's son, who's an assembly member, was there, and he made a. He made a commitment to become more involved in the education and awareness for the young people in his and young adults in his district. But the clergy were ready. Herein is the problem again. You can't get people all and ready to go and drop them.
Right.
And not come back. And believe you me, we've been doing this. This thing started out with, I've been a volunteer with Black Women for Wellness for since their inception, so say 19 years. Yeah, so I've been, there with them from the beginning. And we started that. And it was picked up by the county, and we have great folks who are involved in that, Valerie Coachman Moore and Associates. But the thing about it is, you got to stop talking about it, you really got to do it.
See, here's my thing. Do you have church on your list? I don't know what's on your list. You got 25 questions.
There was.
Where we at?
What was your
Ask me a
question?
question.
The church question is, why are members of the LGBT plus community not going to churches? The church is a place you can go to where you're scared, you're hurt, you're alone, or you need someone to talk to. And the church is instantly the first place to talk to your mind. You can't talk to your friends, talk to God. But why aren't LGBT members going to the church?
They're there.
There you go.
How much time? Okay, they're there. They're at the church. So I think that question should be shifted. Why are they not respected, appreciated, and affirmed within that church is something totally different. Every single church in America has a gay contingent. Actively gay, probably openly gay, and really probably helping the church move forward in a lot of different areas. But the gays, the LGBT community within those churches are not being appreciated, respected, and are not allowed to be who they are. And that is because of traditions that are in place within a lot of churches. There are a lot of churches, traditional churches, that have no problem and issue with the gays that are in there. I'm just saying gays to make it quicker than LGBTQIA. Just right. Only got 2 minutes. But I think the problem comes with, and we've all seen it right now. There's a huge divide in the church, viral divide between the gay community and the traditional black church. I'm just gonna just say black church because I can't speak for the church as a whole because I've never been a part of a white church or Latino church. But the black church has, when it comes to human sexuality, there are some misunderstandings about the dynamics of it. And I think that if pastors would take the time and really just sit down and have a conversation about human sexuality, then how they address the LGBT community will be totally different. But for some reason, people associate homosexuality with whoredom. They assume that every single gay person is somewhere right now having sex with somebody. And they're going to do it all day until it's time to go to church. that is the misconception. They work, church, and sex. That is all gay people do. But I asked this question to a few pastors. Every time I meet a pastor, I ask them, can a celibate homosexual get into heaven? Ooh. And every time I ask that question, there is a long pause. I'm like, so you're telling me that gays are going to hell? That's fine. That's your stance. That's your view. But are you saying the gay that is sexually active going to hell, or just the gay person period is going to hell? The question is never answered.
I think they both can get there.
So do I. And here we are.
But it has to do with the conversation, opening up the scripture, talking about grace, talking about mercy,
And rightfully dividing the word of God.
And rightly dividing the word of God. And I think it starts, again, with smaller groups.
Yes.
I appreciate that you all meet with faith-based individuals, 60. That might be too large.
That's
too large. And then in addition to that, there needs to be follow-up.
But Pastor Mitchell, here's my thing. Here's my thing. And I have been a part of the clergy since 2002. I have been in church my entire life. The problem is the gay community will get a ally within the church, but that ally will not go public and say they're an ally. I have a lot of pastors in my pocket that I can call right now that will say, Dante, I got your back. I love the gay community, but will never get in the pulpit and say, hey, I got the back of the gay community, and what you guys are saying is not cool. So it is a double standard.
Yeah.
So you have someone like me who's out there taking all these Kim Burrell arrows, and really just getting beat over the head and watching all my gay friends say, I've never stepped foot in church again, forget Christianity, I'm done. And then I'm getting phone calls from pastors, are you okay? Yeah, I'm okay, but can you say something, please? Can you post something on social media? My friends are done with Christ.
Yeah.
And not because Christ has dogged them, but because the words of man came out in a wrong tone.
Yeah.
But then you have to, and that's not really your question, but this is always the biggest issue. We blame Christ for what man does.
Right.
We never take into account the human error. If someone misappropriated the word, I am the type of believer that focuses on, you can't take bits and pieces of it. You got to take it all. You can't section off what just fits for you. It has to fit for all. So if I'm out here whoring around, having premarital sex, I'm just as guilty as anybody else.
That's right.
There is no double standard in that because I don't choose to be a a lesbian.
So you're
You know what I'm
fair.
saying? So I still, you know, and again, like I explained to you earlier, I had the stigma of being a teen mom. So I had to fight my way through that. Have we all experienced some church hurt? I dare say anybody probably except you, baby, have not
Yes.
experienced some church hurt. And you probably have too.
Yes,
You
it's
know what I'm
coming.
saying? So we've all been church wounded from our life's experiences. It would be sad for everybody to say, well, I'm done, because we could all say we're done.
That's not helping.
Yeah, it's not helping the situation. In the end, it becomes a personal walk, a personal relationship with who you identify as, if you're a believer in this word, who you identify Christ is to you. He speaks to each and every one of us. And it's going to be in the end to us to adhere and listen to. So it would be sad for those people to be taught like that. And all I can encourage you to say is, again, man fails all the time. And I'm at the point, for me, I want to lift up my pastor daily. You know what I'm saying? Because he's attacked and assaulted as well. Any of them out there are under some type of attack. And generally the one that is the loudest has some closet skeletons as well. You know what I'm saying? We may or may not know anything
Really?
about.
On TV.
Exactly. My favorite show.
I'm just saying.
One of my
Just saying.
favorite shows. So,
Thank you.
one of my favorite shows. So,
Well, I just want to give an example. I've been doing HIV education for almost 15 years. I've spoken almost every church in LA and beyond. When I first started doing this work, I was invited to come to a church to educate the youth department on HIV. Okay, as a person living with the virus, can you come and educate? But before we say yes to you coming, we need to know how you caught it.
Why you caught it?
Yeah, and I said, why? They said, well, if you caught it the other way, then you'll be of no use to our young people because we don't have any gay people at our church. But if you caught it, through like a blood transfusion or from a woman, then you're more than welcome to come. I said, I think the question is very appropriate, so I'm not going to come regardless. And let me know who you get, because I want to come and sit in the back of the room, because I know what I can do. I'm good. They called me a week later. We can't find him. Can you still come? I'm like, yeah, sure. Of course, the price went up. Sure, I'll come. I get there. They let me in with the young people. It's about 40 young people in this room. I'm seeing tongue rings, belly piercings, tattoos, sagging jeans, all kind of stuff. I asked every single adult, I need you all to leave the room. If you're over 18, leave the room. Once they left, I asked those kids, tell me what you want to know about sex. Ask me anything you want. Put it in this basket. When I say it was overflowing in abundance. And the stuff they were asking was stuff they were doing. And I think we do a disservice. Like we started at the top of the show and we said we don't assume that man and Junebug and all them is having sex. Well, they're having sex and they love the Lord. But the problem is we have not found a healthy way to synergize the two, to make those conversations make sense. When I was over the young men's ministry, I gave my young men condoms. I would have mothers cursing me out. You gave my son condoms, you're a minister, and you're this and you're that. I'm like, but your son is having sex. Right. I know he's having sex. Your son confides in me he's having sex. Right. Until your son hits that piss in his life, where he's like, you know what? For God I live, for God I die, I'm about to be abstinent, celibate, no more condoms, then he won't take them. But right now, do you want a grandchild? Do you want your son to have all these STDs? What do you want? Right. Because I'm trying to be practical in my approach and realize these young kids they're doing it. Yeah. But I'm never saying, go out and do it.
Well,
we talk about it.
I've had the same experience as being a heterosexual youth and young adult minister or director of a department. And we had one young man who, my CNI could tell that he was bisexual. But it was brought in by one and ended up sleeping with 3 and getting 2 pregnant. But when I wanted to have the dialogue, to have, someone come in and talk about sex education and abstinence, for those who are going to be abstinent only, and prevention and education, I was, blasted. I didn't ask to be your youth and young adult minister. You asked me. You brought me in. I was sitting there on the pew, minding my business.
Not bothering you.
Not bothering nobody.
And it's volunteers.
Exactly, and my daughter and my brother would bring their friends in, they then pull the friends and turn them against us. So don't think it's just you, we all get that.
Can I just say one thing? The church is made up of individuals.
Right.
Pastors, deacons, lay people. We're all humans, and we all have flaws. And we do things and say things that we should not.
True.
I want to encourage all of us not to give up on the clergy. But if you can reach us, we can be a great empowerment tool for you. But I think it's important that we have the conversation in smaller groups so that they can be transparent and they can talk about their situations. And as you mentioned, they could be dealing with some stuff, because we're all dealing with some stuff. And no one shares all of their information.
Never. Nor should that.
And nor should. That's right.
And on that note, I would like to thank you all for coming here.
What? We're good?
It's been 2 hours.
I was just getting warmed up. This said church.
Part two.
Just push pause, shade shirts, and do part two. Right, sweep this over. The whole series real quick.
Oh, we need to do this again. I love this. I love how we can just not pull our punches when we speak about things like this. But I love all of you guys, and I'm so very thankful that you took 2 hours of your busy day to come and meet with me and talk about this. And I will also personally send all of you the info for this video, and I'm going to send a link in the description for any other websites or resources you want the youth to look at as well.
Awesome job.